Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 189 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome back to the show. In this episode, we're going to be talking about lessons on the firing line. So we just finished up a long-range shooting school in Immokalee, Florida, and in a movers class in Swainsboro, Georgia. Great time, great people, great friends, great barbecue, great conversations, really just an excellent experience. But I want to share with you all the things that happen, things that people don't expect, things you have to watch out for, and things that will get you into trouble. So we want to share this podcast with all the love in our heart and saying, look, lessons from the firing line, the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, before we get started, I want to say a quick thank you to TriggerTech. TriggerTech is the maker of fine rifle triggers. They're made in a great Canadian Friends of the North in Canada. They make lots of different makes and models, including single stage, two stage, straight shoes, curved shoes, groove shoes, really just about for every make and model of action out there as well. So whether you're in bench rest or hunting, they make a great upgrade for a rifle. Really, in our minds, the safest and probably the best trigger on the market. So if you want to learn more about upgrading your rifle or your game by upgrading your trigger, you can stop over to triggertech.com. That's triggertech.com today. We'd also like to thank Krieger Barrels. Krieger is the maker of fine cut rifle barrels, family owned and operated out of the great state of Wisconsin. We use them for a lot of our rifles here. They are an upgrade. They are hard to get. 9 to 12 months lead time. We try to keep them in inventory. World-class barrels from a world-class maker with a world-class family. So they have a new program called Krieger Direct where you can order your barrel and have it in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So if you want the best and you need it now, stop over to KriegerDirect.com. That's KriegerDirect.com today. So we just got finished up with a long-range shooting school in Immokalee, Florida, as well as a movers class. Collectively, I believe at the one event, they shot somewhere around 200 rounds at the movers class. The average was 220 to 280 rounds consecutively through the rifles. What's really interesting is when you have people coming to these events, all the things that you see that happen, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And what really, in my mind, is some of the red flags to get thrown in the air. And some of the things I want to cover here in this podcast to try to help you to prevent this stuff, and B, how to deal with it on the line. Like, how do you fix some of these things? So we have students that came in to our Florida class from around the country, from as far as Washington State to Canada, from Ohio. They a lot of people took the time to travel to Florida to join us, and we really, really appreciate that. We had some individuals from Massachusetts come down to Florida, and I think, just a nice getaway, nice warm weather, and it was warm for sure, especially when it was snowing back home here in Pennsylvania. To walk right into 88, 90 degree weather for a couple of days was quite a shell shock for me personally. It was a great time, but also it just reminds me over and over again about all the things that we see on the firing line, because we get to see multitudes of rifles being shot a lot. And one of the things that always happens when we do this type of training is the uglies come out instantly. So when you go to your local range and you fire 10 or 20 rounds here and there, you go and shoot a box and a half of shells, 20, shells, just getting the rifle zeroed in and just goofing around with it a little bit. It's not being used as if it was just really full on being hammered. And so what happens is the little things and quirks don't really play themselves out that fast. But when you set up at a shooting school for 3 days and you really start racking the rounds through the gun, the little things start to surface quickly, and they come out, and sometimes students don't know what to do, and sometimes, in essence, it ruins their event. I mean, you travel, 1,500 miles to come to a class, and your rifle breaks down the first day. Unless you have a backup, you're in trouble. You spent all this money for time and travel, and I think the same thing happens on a hunt. You go out on a hunt of a lifetime, and you spend a small fortune to get there, for the guide services, for the licenses, everything that you've ever dreamed of, and then all of a sudden your rifle starts to let you down. That happens actually more often than you think. In this particular class, we had 2 issues on the school, and then we had a couple issues that played out just a little bit in the actual movers class. So it's not uncommon, and we're prepared to deal with it. We bring lots of tools. We know these things happen. we know that most customers don't expect it to happen. So we bring lots of equipment and stuff to try to help them out the best we can. So let's start at the long-range shooting school. Right out of the gate, we had a 6-dasher that had alpha brass, good quality rifle, good quality ammunition, downloaded the information off the internet on loading data, definitely over max, worked fine at home, brought it to Florida, started flattening primers, getting stiff bolt lifts, almost piercing primers. So he, to his own detriment, raised his hand and said, "Hey, I'm having a small issue here." And, you could see it right away that this was pressure. And he was such a great sport about it. We're like, "Hey, sorry, you've got to pull that rifle off the line. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it." Now, to his credit, he had a friend there that helped him get all set up with a backup rifle. And right back into the class he went, and eventually took the Top Gun hat. So with somebody else's rifle, which I found to be absolutely amazing. Most people would just lose it, that they've spent all this money to come here and they can't shoot their own rifle. He did a great job. He accepted responsibility for it. He was like, I tested it at home. I didn't find anything. I'm not sure what's going on, whether it's the heat here, whether it's, just a change in the temperatures. Really not quite sure, but we always err on the side of caution. And I always remind people that you have to look to the people left and right of you to make sure that you're not going to wind up blowing a rifle up and hurting yourself or the people shooting next to you, which I find to be so important. And so he took the rifle off the line, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And by the next day, he was back in shooting again with another rifle and ended up winning the Top Gun hat. So, he kept it mentally together. He didn't panic. I really got to say he's got it well put together. Then I learned over dinner on the second night that he was a drill sergeant in the Army. I have the utmost respect for anybody who's been a drill sergeant, regardless of the service that they've attended, whether they're Marines or Army or whatever. Those guys, to me, made a huge impression on me when I was a kid. The utmost respect, and it's probably why he was so cool and even headed through the whole process. He really didn't panic about it, which a lot of shooters would have done. So that was one issue. Another issue is we had a gentleman that had a local smith bet his rifle, and I know the rifle. I actually built it. However, though, where he's from, it was just easier to let a local smith build a rifle. Now, prior to betting it, the rifle was a hammer. We built this rifle probably 3 years ago for this client. And I know the rifle, I know it well, and I know the client. He's been to us many times over the years with many different schools. Well, rather than sending it to us, he decided to have somebody local do it just because of the expense and the worrisome of sending out your firearms. And we get that, sure. But he just got it bedded, did a couple quick zero shots, and brought it to the school, and it shot terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I was looking at him, I was like, "What happened?" He was like, "I don't know what's going on." We're watching, and he was having trouble feeding and functioning the rifle a lot. So then he raised his hand. He was like, "Hey, I think I know what happened." He's like, "I had the rifle bedded right before I came here. And when he popped the magazine in, his round is almost 100 thousandths slower or 150 thousandths slower than it should be in the magazine." So if you can picture when you pop your magazine in, how it's sort of lined up to feed and function into your chamber, the round was setting about 100 thousandths slower, which means the guy taped up the barrel and jacked it up to get a lot of bedding compound, basically raising the receiver. And then obviously he did a terrible job bedding it because it was all over the place. It literally probably tripled, if not quadrupled, the group size of the rifle because this gentleman's very specific and had a logbook that documented how well the rifle shot. Literally group after group, just really great shooting on his part. And then all of a sudden, if you compare it to what he was shooting there at the class, it was terrible. So the other thing is, and I actually had this happen to me when I was much, much younger. I was getting ready to go to a championship shoot locally. And of course, I was super young. I didn't do any gunsmithing at all. I was still military, law enforcement, all that stuff. I had a local gunsmith that always talked about bedding, and this rifle really was a great shooter. I thought, okay, we're getting ready to start this Northeast Regional Championship here. I would like to get the rifle bedded right before the match and see what I can do with it. And, if I can get a little bit more accuracy out of it in factory class, that's a win, right? Well, I gave him the rifle. A month and a half later, literally days before the championship match, I get the rifle back. It is shooting terrible, terrible. And then I'm totally frustrated. I don't know what to do with it. I reached down and grabbed the barreled action and tried to move it in the stock, and it was clicking back and forth. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? And I've had other experiences with custom rifles, where I'm either waiting a million years to get it, or I'm worried, is it going to shoot when I get it back, because it's all custom work. And so needless to say, it cost me the match. I mean, obviously I didn't do well in the match, and the gun was certainly capable of shooting less than a half inch for sure. And if I did my job right, I could probably keep it around an inch at 300 yards, which is more than capable of winning this match. And I shot terrible. I left the firing line thinking how stupid I was right before an event to go and have that kind of work done and then not have the time to test it. Now, I'm sure in this customer's defense and in my own, I assumed that I would be getting it back in a couple weeks and that when I got it back, it'd be ready to go. I got it 3 or 4 weeks past when I was supposed to. And then on top of that, the rifle shot off. When I told Eddie, I said, I've done exactly what you're doing. I literally only had time to go do a quick zero check, and the mattress was within a day or two. And I try not to practice a lot right before a match. You go into that panic mode. And the same thing happened to Eddie. He was he shot a round or two, threw it just to check a zero, and just came straight to the school. I mean, he got it that close to coming down. And the rifle shot terrible. It certainly has to be all cut out and rebedded. So I guess the lessons from the firing line from the long-range shooting school is, A, be really careful. You'll notice I did a little short on YouTube talking about going by the book. Be really careful when you're reloading, especially in competition when you start reading on forums and other people posting stuff. They mean well. I don't think they mean to hurt anybody or cost anybody an event. But a lot of people really do load over max all the time, and they get away with it all the time. And then they tell their friends about these incredible fast loads they're shooting and speeds they're getting. And the load that he loaded wasn't that crazy. It wasn't like he was 10 grains over max. But, the combination of his load, it could have been the dirty barrel, a little bit of carbon. You can always get a little bit of a donut, we call it, in the throat area, a carbon ring. That can cause pressure spikes and cause all kinds of issues. So that's got to be cleaned out. And then you take that with going down to Florida in 90-degree weather, and the combination meant that he was almost piercing primers and certainly flattening primers and getting real stiff bolt lifts. It happens that fast. So I just want to share with you, when you're getting ready to go to an event like this, try to stay with what you have. Don't panic. Don't go out and have a bunch of work done right before a match. I mean, regardless of who's doing it, it just doesn't give you time to verify whether it's better, the same, or worse. And you go and you take that to the match, and you know how the rifle shot prior. It's really just sets you up for failure. And then the other thing is when you talk about reloading, go buy the book. Go look it up on Hodgkin's website. Go out and purchase it. Hornady's book. I have a library full of reloading books that date back into the 60s, and I love them because I can cross-reference 30 different manuals on the same caliber, and I can sort of see what everybody's saying, where Max is lying, and there's a wide swing amongst the books over the years, but it really gives you, I think, a 1,000-foot view of really the big picture where everybody's saying the max load is lying, both the minimum max and a max, because everybody's got this max range, and they can be quite different. But I always like to do a ton of research when I'm reloading for a caliber, and this is the main reason why. Now let's get into the movers class. The movers class was absolutely incredible, and good grief did we get lucky. So we had a train up on Friday. It rained like crazy. I mean, it was pouring. We were leaving to go get barbecue, and of course it's Georgia sand. It was on everything. It was in everything. We got to shoot under cover, so we weren't trashed, but our vehicle certainly got trashed when we were leaving for dinner. And had the movers class been going on with people in the pits, they would have rather been unpleasant. And what we try to do in those scenarios is we'll take a breather during the heavy downpours and get everybody some shelter, and then we'll get back after it again. We've been lucky. We've been doing it a long time, and we can always make up lost ground. So if it pours on us on Friday and Saturday, we can always shoot in between the raindrops, and we've got that third day built in there for a reason. But the average round count was 220 to 280 rounds on movers, and we made them 8-inch movers, not 10. So we made the targets 20% smaller, and they were still engaging them and hitting them 600 and in for practice and for teaching purposes 4 and 300 was really incredible to watch, even with the winds that we had. And then we did have some hits at 1,000 on an 8-inch balloon walking. I think with most people with movers, it's one of those things you don't think about with a rifle. You think about shooting a shotgun at a clay pigeon flying through the air at 100 mile an hour, or you think about, shooting a running rabbit or something like that. But rarely do people think about shooting movers with a rifle. And once you get that technique down, once you learn how to handle your rifle, once it ticks, I always say it's like the light bulbs come on. Like I can see it, as we're working. We have a very specific way that we train this, and we do it on purpose because what we're trying to do is get all the lights to come on. And you see the first hour or two, people are struggling. It's the concept, right? And then all of a sudden, it's just like somebody went down the line and just started pulling their light switches. It was like, all of a sudden it was like, oh, I got this, right? And as soon as that happens, it is on. Now, it's not easy, right? There's a lot of stuff going on from the person in the pits carrying the target and maybe swaying a little bit. You've got the wind moving the target around a little bit. You've got the wind you're trying to hold on an 8-inch target that's moving. So there's a lot going on. So there are some misses, but they did and shot fantastic. Here's what I've learned from the movers class. Number one, coming prepared with all the tools possible that you could possibly need, right? Including stuff to patch out and clean your rifle. Being prepared with that not only will probably make sure that it never happens to you. So if I take tools, I never need them. Usually somebody else is using them. So it's sort of like a good luck charm or a preemptive strike to help somebody else out. But then also feeding and functioning. I know that we've talked about this in previous podcasts, and we're going to do a whole armors course, which is going to be free for a while. So we'll eventually have it up on Patreon to where, we're going to ask people to donate a couple dollars to enjoy all the content. But right now, we're getting ready to film our entire instructional video on how to build a rifle from components, especially a precision bolt action rifle. And with most of the rifles costing the core components somewhere between $2,300 and $3,500, with a rifle that will outperform about any rifle on the planet regardless of the cost, right? So we're very accuracy driven. We are getting ready to ramp up into production. We want to teach people this so we can turn the keys over to them. So they're not like doing what we've all done and send stuff out with a crossing of the fingers and making sure that we rub our heads and turn to the left 3 times for good luck. That makes sure we get our rifle back in a better condition than it was sent out in, right? We want to turn that over to you. The feeding and functioning is so critical for follow-up shots with movers. Getting the magazine adjusted. We were talking about it at one of the breaks was how important it is to take the time to modify your magazine. And people looked at me funny like, what are you talking about? Like, modify what? And it's like, this is something we used to do 25 years ago. We used to take AI magazines. We would clean up the lips. We would bend them a little bit. We want that rifle to feed and function perfectly. This is stamped metal. This isn't precision. These are stamped parts that are designed to feed and function in most rifles. And they have sharp edges on them. Sometimes the springs are too strong, so we know how to sort of reduce the spring tension a little bit to make it a little bit easier when you load the magazine full. So show of hands, I know you're all driving or probably on an airplane, but show of hands of how many people that have loaded a 5-round magazine with 5 rounds and they can't get the first round out when they go to close the bolt. That's easy to fix. I can show you how to do it. We do it all the time. And in movers classes, you want a very smooth and fast follow-up shot without jerking you around or getting you off target. That is so important. If not, what happens is your focus goes from not following the mover to getting ready for the next shot to like now back to the rifle, trying to deal with either a round that's not feeding right or one that got stuck or one that didn't. It's just a million things. So I would say if anything with the movers is, maintenance on the rifle because you're going to put a lot of rounds through it. And then making sure that you have your magazine fitted properly to your magazine and have more than one. Have 2 or 3. Mark them on the bottom with your name, scribe on them or something so you know which ones are yours because they do get moved around. But then I would say having a perfectly functioning magazine, super, super important. The other thing that I thought was interesting in the movers is how prepared everybody was with all of their equipment. So everybody traveled in, everybody had lots of gear. How many people had the Garmin chronograph is absolutely incredible. By the way, I have one now. I'm super excited. What a great piece of kit. Leave it to Garmin. I mean, Garmin does everything from aircraft, aviation. You think about all the automatic pilot systems out there that Garmin does. You think about their watches. You think about their navigation for boats, big boats, little boats. I mean, Garmin does about everything, right? And leave it to them to come up with a chronograph for the shooting community, and a good one at that. I mean, we probably had 5 guys show up with them. I mean, super small, just not picky, shooting suppressed rifles. We were still going to keep our we have a Magneto Speed, we have 2 shooting cronies, and now we got a LabRadar. We keep those. Some of it's for aesthetics or just for good luck because we've had them so long, or backups. And we'll probably keep the LabRadar just as a backup chronograph because we've seen in the past. Like we used to have 2 shooting cronies. And the reason being is because every once in a while someone would shoot one, when we're chronographing back, 25 years ago. Not uncommon. For those that didn't know what shooting cronies are, there was a reason why they had a policy that if you shot it, they'd send it back and build it. So yes, I've had my chronograph shot, old shooting cronies. And then we have a Magneto Speed that was a backup to our LabRadar, and now we've got a Garmin. I got one. I'm super excited. It should show up today, like a kid with a new toy, right? So we had a bunch of those there. They were awesome. I would say then the other thing is going over your rifle to make sure everything is tight and right. So make sure you get yourself a set of fix-it sticks, which is probably the best gunsmithing toolkit you'll ever buy, and use the proper inch-pound wrenches when you're tightening everything up on your rifle, and go over everything, including something so simple as your pick rail that locks your bipod on. Make sure that your bipod is locked on tight. Make sure that that's adjusted appropriately. Make sure that you're not just your scope rings, but your base that it locks to. If your base is separate from your receiver, make sure that's locked in at the appropriate inch pounds. And then another thing, a little tidbit, is make sure that when you're tightening up your action screws with the gun empty, make sure your rifle is pointed in the up position. So we usually we'll start the screws, but then we'll stand the rifle upright on the buttstock. And so that way the weight of the barreled action is pushing against the recoil lug. And then we'll slowly start tightening the top one to finger tight, and then tighten the bottom to finger tight. And then we'll come back up to the top one and tighten a little more, bottom a little more. Then we'll tighten them to their set. Whether it's 45 or 65 inch pounds. The reason being is you got to have that recoil lug in contact. If it's not, we've seen people where they just put the rifle together, they bolt it together, and it's not actually touching the back of the recoil lug. And so the barreled action is able to move around a little bit, and it will cause you all kinds of grief. It really will. We've seen it. We know it will. So make sure that when you're tightening up your action screws, we showed it there in the class because we were like, hey, when you put that together, did you stand it upright? And it literally solved the problem almost instantly. Whatever was happening with the rifle never re-happened again. So just to throw that out there again. So really had a great time. I know we had a little lull in the podcast here going down to Immokalee, then heading to Swainsboro. I think I was gone for 9 days. And of course I have to drive with all the equipment that we take. And I think I drove 3,300 miles till I got back home on Monday. And then, of course, we had a full week of work trying to play catch up right into Easter. Now, we don't have any more remote classes going on for this year. All of our classes here are in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and we have 3 slots left for the year for our long-range shooting school. Next year, we'll probably reconsider going down to Immokalee and possibly to Swainsboro in March again. And maybe what we'll do is we'll hold 2 shooting schools in Immokalee, then come up and teach the movers, and just make it a full week-long event. It was really a great time. We'll know more about that as we get closer to this fall. If we announce it, it'll probably be in August. That's usually when we announce our following year's date. So if you want to learn more about when we announce new classes or dates, you can stop over to our website. It's wolfprecision.net, and you can just sign up for our newsletter. And you can see the newsletters. If you hit the info tab on the far right, you'll see where it says newsletter. You can register there. We usually send out a newsletter every couple weeks, and then this is where we'll post up if we decide to make any other trips outside. We'll send a notification via newsletter letting everybody know that, hey, we are going to do a class in Immokalee again, or hey, we're going to do the movers again in March, and here's the dates. But if you'd like to join us this year, our classes are almost full for the entire year. I think we have 3 slots left. You can stop over to wolfprecision.net and learn more about that there. The upcoming class, I just want to give a quick update here. The online long-range shooting school now will be really wrapping up with some advanced classes and some bonus content. I think we have 80 students attending that class right now, getting lots of great reviews. I really appreciate it. We've got about 18 hours of content. It is springtime. And so if you're interested in attending something like our long-range shooting school, but just can't get here, that's why we filmed it. And it's been 2 years of work to get to where we're at now. And then by the end of the time it's done, it'll be about 2.5 years of just constant chipping away at it. And really it is our entire in-person long-range shooting school for you to learn from and attend from the convenience and comfort of your own home. And then we even tell guys that are planning on attending our in-person shooting school, it's not a bad thing to jump in there and even go over some of the videos when it comes to the fundamentals of marksmanship and go over some of the videos when it talks about the wind to sort of get you a leg up before you get here, before you're hearing it for the first time here at the class. And then, of course, here at the homeschool, we get the practical application of going out under guidance and actually shooting and learning with hands-on on the rifle. So really excited for all that. But if you want to learn more about our online long-range shooting school, it's $49.95 a month. You can sign up or unsign up at any time. So students can come back after a year and they can re-register, or they can re-sign up and take a refresher for a month or two, then unsign up. That's absolutely fine. That's what it's there for. But it is at Patreon, and you can find us at wolfprecision.net. Just look for our online long-range shooting school. And then you click on the register. It'll take you over to Patreon to register. But then we always recommend people come back to our home website, to the online long-range shooting school, because every video that you see is highlighted in blue as an active video. And that way you can actually watch them in chronological order. That way Patreon only keeps the oldest video up top, and you have to go to the bottom and work backwards. Where if you attend the class from our actual page, you can take the class in order and view the subjects you want to watch. Just click on it. You can watch it from there. But really appreciate everybody that's attended the class. We're super excited. We are doing the gunsmithing and custom rifle building videos. We're starting to produce those now. They will be free for a while, and until we get probably more than 60 or 70% of the content done, then we may move it back over to Patreon for a small fee to help cover our costs and expenses and recover some of the funds that we were putting out to make all this great content. But for a while, if you would like to learn a lot about building rifles or building custom rifles and all the little tricks and tips that we use here, we're going to make it for free. You can stop over to Wolf Precision and see that as well. We just have our intro videos on there right now. More videos will be starting to be posted up next week. So we're really looking forward to that as well. So for 2024, going into 2025, we're really tooling up now. We're really getting after what we consider a rifle kit. And it's a different concept with a bolt action rifle. We really think rather than buying a custom rifle, than buying pre-fits to replace, what we do is at an extremely high level of accuracy as far as being able to consistently build the same rifle over and over again without any human intervention. So in other words, when we make a chamber called the ACE system, we can make a perfect rifle chamber. We can control it from both sides. The way that we make a chamber is absolutely impossible to do inside of a barrel. It cannot be done. It's 100% impossible, and it is the best way to make a rifle chamber. And then we do our barrel work to accept the chamber, and then, of course, we can thread it for a suppressor, all of that. Then we have our receiver, which is a bad action. You've got the igniter, you've got the new hammerhead, you've got the bumblebees and vampires and HRs. And then, of course, we got in the stocks and triggers and some other things. But really, when we talk about a rifle kit, is we're talking about a barrel with an ACE either attached or unattached. So the next couple of videos is going to be going over the tooling that you'll need to attach the ACE on the barrel yourself and unattach it. So we're going to teach you how to change the chambers. Then we're going to talk about how to take care of your barreled action. Then we're going to talk about how to put it into your stock. But really, our goal is to be a components-based company to help people get their own custom rifle up and running and take care of themselves. Now, we do offer an assembled kit, which is basically the barreled action put together, put in the stock. The only thing you have to do is drop in your trigger, and it's a nominal fee. I think it's $295. We'll build the entire rifle for you minus one working part, and then you can actually finish it from there. Now, the minus one working part is always interesting. It's either minus the trigger or minus the stock. You can send us the stock for an inspection, and we do mandate that if we're going to honor our warranty or our accuracy guarantee on the rifle, it's mandatory. And the reason being is we know that that's a weak link and that can cause serious issues with the potential accuracy. We know that some stocks can actually have errors machined into them. Other ones kind of been monkeyed with. So you bought it used on whatever forum out there and somebody did some work to it and you didn't catch it, or they had it bedded, or we like to say, okay, look, if we're going to send out a barreled action and you already have your stock, that's absolutely fine. But send us your stock and let us look at it. Let us inspect it. If it needs to be bedded, we'll tell you. And we don't bed every single one. They all don't need it. And we're very honest on that end. But it gives us a chance to say, yep, this is perfect. We've got all the clearances where we need to go. Your trigger's not catching anywhere. We don't have, issues in some other spot that you just wouldn't think that cause issue. We've had so many issues in the early years when guys were changing stock. So, for example, I remember one gentleman changed his stock from what the rifle came with to something that was new on the market, and his trigger wasn't clearing, and he actually damaged his trigger trying to force it into that chassis. Now, it wasn't life-threatening and it wasn't life-changing, but he didn't know, and he didn't know how to check for these clearances, and it caused him an issue. Now, we fixed it, of course, and got him all back up and running again, and it wasn't our fault, but at the same time, we know that this stuff, and I can tell you 1,000 stories just like it, happen all the time. We like to intervene. I think we charge like a $40 handling fee till we get the stock in, put it here with your name on it. And then when somebody goes over it and sends it back to you, whatever we're going to do with it. But at least it gives you an opportunity. I always say it's like a $40 insurance policy to make sure it's going to fit right when you get it. We're really focused on, first, we would like to sell the individual components and let the customers purchase them or the builders purchase them. We are eventually going to offer a dealer program, and we're thinking it's going to be like a Wolf Precision Pro Shop where it's going to be regional. It's not going to be in every city. It's not going to be in every state. But we want a performance center, a couple of them posted around the country. So we're going to be looking for that in the spring. And then we still offer full, complete custom rifles. So we do have customers that do not want to build anything. They're like, hey, I am too busy. Don't want to monkey with it. Is not my cup of tea. Please build me the rifle. And we do offer that. That is a custom rifle. And we build them and send them out every month, just like that. But we're really trying to train the majority of the customers to either buy the kit or the assembled kit. But there's going to be lots of videos coming up to support all of that. Hopefully you get a chance to stop over to YouTube and Patreon and get to see all that stuff. It's going to be posted up for free, and it's going to be on our online gunsmithing school or armorers course. So if it's on a page on our website, you'll start to see some videos posted up soon. So we're making a list of all the people we want to invite on the podcast. We got a couple people we'd like to talk to in particular about calibers, which I think would be some great backstories. We're trying to get that list all put together to try to have some really great content with some interviews, and then hopefully we're going to have some video podcasts, and we'll be able to actually film the podcast while we're actually recording it, which we're looking to have that maybe happen sometime this summer. So we're sort of excited for that. So lots of big things coming on with the podcast as our business grows here as well. We really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us here. It means a lot. If you'd like to support the show, you can stop over to Patreon, $3 a month, join the Wolf Pack. We certainly appreciate that. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us and give us a call anytime. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you are listening to Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.